Morning Breakup team. We got in really late last night, around midnight. Well, that's not true. We probably landed at nearly 11 and then got into the hotel here at around midnight. So we didn't get too much current news consumed last night. I don't think we're going to be going very long today. We've got a meeting coming up. Good morning, Enmity. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. I just wanted to say hi. I was almost going to cancel this morning, but I miss you guys too much. Good morning, Dad's out. I was trying to pronounce that. Good morning, Bitcoin Graffiti. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're doing well, Robert. Here's the Dad's out one that I had trouble with. Yeah, busy with conference indeed, team. Bitcoin Graffiti asks. Not so much busy with conference as in just traveling yesterday. It always takes time, right? Traveling and then slept in-ish. I probably didn't get to bed till about 1 last night and then didn't wake up till like 6 this morning, which is sleeping in for me, right? So I don't really know what's going on in the world. Things move quick, but I do know that the sun came up this morning, guys. We're good. Bitcoin's running, so we're extra good. So all that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what little new I know about, but I do know some stuff. So I don't even have a Moscow time for y'all this morning. I tried to find one last minute, but they weren't that good. So I'm not going to waste time on a bad Moscow time. We'll have a full show tomorrow. Today is just a bit of a crazy day, right? And I've got to go to a meeting anyway at the top of the hour, so I will not make it 20 minutes this morning. But I did want to just talk about the whole Durham and Trump and Russia, and all of that stuff, right? So the way I see it, and this is really what this event, if you're not here at the event, if you haven't made it to the event, one of the main predictions I made with this event is that in 2024, Bitcoin's going to be at the center of attention for everything that's going on right now with censorship, with government institutions run amok, with the economy, with all of these things, even the nature and role of the President of the United States of America. So remember, we've talked a lot about how the presidency is an organic thing, right? There is no rule book on how the presidency of the United States is performed, right? There's a little bit of a description of the tools that the president has, but most of the tools were acquired over time. I really see leaders of every country as having a toolbox, and I sort of always have. The reason I do is because in Canada, the toolbox that the Prime Minister has, I made the argument for many years, is the greatest. It doesn't mean they're the most powerful. That's not what I'm saying. What I mean is that the amount of tools available to a Canadian Prime Minister in their job is just greater, even on paper and in practice, than in other leaders in other countries. The reasons for that, I'm not sure. It just grew that way. And if a Canadian Prime Minister, so there's a difference. If a Canadian Prime Minister like the current one has a minority government, which means he doesn't control Congress and the Senate and what we call Parliament, the House of Commons and the Senate in Canada, the lower house and the upper house. If he doesn't control the lower house in particular, he's very weak, or she is very weak. But if they have a majority, so currently it is a minority government, and the only reason Trudeau in Canada has any amplification and any capacity to stay in the job is because another party props him up. They could end it at any time, so very weak right now. But a prime minister in Canada in a majority situation has so many tools at their disposal. Now the American president, much more powerful, right? We're not talking about overall power, just the few tools that the US president has makes them technically, obviously, the most powerful world leaders. Now, it's the same idea as like a dictator having a ton of power, right? They're not overall more powerful. They just have more tools in their toolkit when it comes to their uh, nation jurisdiction. But here's the thing: everything we saw with the Durham report yesterday. So yesterday, the Russia collusion, Russia collusion, all that stuff fell apart, right? The Durham report finally came out, and I haven't really looked too much into details simply because it's not a surprise. And I've gotten so bored over time with this Russia story. It's like impossible to even follow. Like, what did they say again? And what was everyone worried about? I never gave it any time in the first place. I thought it was a scam from day one. From day one, I was like, I'm not going to waste time learning about this thing. Now, all I did was look out for those signs that show us how these hoaxes work, right? That became the most interesting thing to me. How they use the media to have those stupid leaks. Remember the leaks that used to always come out, and we always knew where the leaks were coming from. They were coming from the FBI. They were coming from the so-called deep state. So if you add these leaks together and you start to get a picture of how political powers infiltrate different institutions in the United States and have these outcomes, that became the most interesting thing to me. That's why we talk a lot here about seeing the progression over time. You know, I talked yesterday about Charlottesville. Now, when you look at the Patriot Front rally this weekend, or whatever you want to call it, in the United States, or the COVID 2020 videos, the people falling on the subway platforms, after just a few years, we start to get a sense of the sophistication of these information laundering systems and of these PSYOP systems. And that became the most interesting thing to me, looking for the telltale signs of an op, right? And once you saw these ops out in the open and you started to be able to diagnose them very easily, it allows us to see and predict what's coming, right? So a lot of people said, for example, January 6th, before January 6th, don't go. It's probably an op, right? That was out there. A lot of people were warning folks to not go to DC that day because they were going to get ensnared in some kind of a major operation. And that looks like it's what happened. So the whole point of what I organized the show, so coming back to the show and next year's show, I fundamentally believe that everything a person needs to navigate their way through this troubling time is within the Bitcoin community. And you get a sense of how institutions can be revitalized. You get a sense of how they need to be changed. The role of the president needs to change. The role of all of these things that were set up during World War II. You know, it's the same old story that I've shared many times. We basically left the machine of World War II running after World War II. We left all the aircraft carriers on. We left all the people in their chairs at all the different departments that sprung up in order to realize this huge effort to mobilize the United States in World War II. And we never shut it off. The whole engine has been humming and running these 80 years. And here we are now trying to keep these things running. And they seem as ridiculous, more ridiculous now than they ever have, right? They might have seemed ridiculous 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but how bad they've become is giving us a new perspective on everything that's come before, which is opening our minds to big change, right? And that's what Bitcoin, that's the sort of hole in the defenses that Bitcoin requires. It's not a bunch of people understanding, I get Federal Reserve banking now. I understand economics. That's all important, right? But that's not exactly what's going to drive people into change. What really has to happen is that people's minds have to be open to total change, a complete reordering of things. And once you have a blank slate, let's say, right? Once you start saying we can rebuild from scratch because what is there before is not even salvageable. It's not even salvageable, right? We can't fix it. It's unfixable. You have to just start over. That is one of the biggest psychological dams that has to break in America in order for us to move to a Bitcoin standard and fix the problems that we have. So when you see this Durham report, if you guys haven't heard the news, right? Again, I don't know any of the details of the Russia collusion thing because it's so boring. And I stopped paying attention years ago. And my advice to everyone in 2016, 2017, well, it wasn't really around in 2016. My advice to everyone in 2017 and 2018 was just don't waste time on it. Even people that were, I would do it in a friendly way to Republicans or Bitcoiners who are stressed out. Oh, what's going on? I'd say just don't pay attention. It's the stupidest thing. But on the other end, all of these people that were gleefully waiting for Trump to go to jail because Russian prostitutes had peed on him and he was now blackmailable, right? Because of all of that, I said to them too, just don't waste your time on it. This something stinks in this story. And now we see years later that the whole thing was obviously a scam and stupid from the beginning. So it looks like indeed there was a kind of insurrection in America that now is so hard for many people to look at. The implications of what's going on is so terrible for most people because it conflicts exactly with their idea of what America is, that it's just hard for the brain to compute. It necessarily causes cognitive dissonance. It necessarily causes short circuiting of people's worldviews. But that's the good news. That's the good news. Anyone who faces up to what's going on right now, this is another one of those events where you're going to see people become sort of free radicals and get unshackled from the prison of two ideas, which is the constant antagonism of US political parties. And if you break free of that fake prison, you start to get into a situation where your mind is open to a complete rechange. Now, you've had Vivek Ramaswamy, who has come out and said we need to reboot the FBI. I think you're going to hear that a lot over the internet. You had DeSantis with one of the most clear statements yesterday. Let me read you Ron DeSantis' statement. I don't have great notes here. Oh, here it is. Yeah, I opened right to it. I got lucky today, guys. The first picture I clicked on was the DeSantis statement. So here's what DeSantis says. The Durham report confirmed what we already knew. Weaponized federal agencies manufactured a false conspiracy theory about Trump-Russia collusion. It reminds us of the need to clean house at these agencies as they've never been held accountable for this egregious abuse of power. Vivek's statement, if I can find it as easily as I found that one, is equally as clear and easy to understand as what we saw with DeSantis. Let me find it. He basically is asking for the same situation, though, just a complete teardown of. Here it is. And this one, Vivek has a real way, glitching a little. Yeah, I'm not going to go long, guys. This is a terrible internet from the hotel. I'll be broadcasting live from the venue and the event the next few days. So this is just, but I won't be going much longer, team. It's just because I missed you guys today. I couldn't, I was writing the tweet saying, I don't really have a thing today. But I did. It's too much news. I had to share it with you. I just had to come out, and it's a good one. So Vivek, in 1964, the FBI tried to blackmail MFK into committing suicide. Almost 60 years later, the same administrative agency continues to target and destroy its political enemies. This needs to finally end. Shut down the FBI, and yes, this is much more practical than it sounds. So, and you're getting many people. Joe Lonsdale here. These are people who you would have considered the kind of righteous Americans that would have, if they even heard the national anthem in a restaurant. I've been to those restaurants. It freaks a lot of international people out. I was in South Korea once, and I walked into like a bar, like a club at night, and it was right near the U.S. military base, and it shocked people. You walk in, you open the doors, and because the U.S. national anthem was playing, every single person in the bar was standing at attention with their hand on their heart. And foreigners don't get that, right? I was with a couple of Europeans, and they get like grossed out by it, right? Oh, these fucking dumb pardon my swearing, these dumb Americans and their patriotism, right? And I get why they would say it's dumb. I get that, right? But this guy, Joe Lonsdale, is the kind of guy who 12 years ago would have been there with his hand on his heart saying, God bless America, blah, 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 right? Now, I believe God bless America. I'm not here to downplay the amazing force in the universe that America is and will continue to be. But it's got to fix the problems that it has right now. And opening up even people like Joe Lonsdale. So here's what he said about Vivek's comment, right? I'm warming up to this idea as I read more about how some of these recent cases were handled / clear corruption. What a mess. Rebuild the FBI from scratch. Some top talent can apply for their jobs back. We need to clean house in Washington, D.C. And that's not a statement. You know how the division between Republicans and Democrats just in 2020 around defund the police, right? The best idea the Democrats have ever had. Defund the police. Amazing. How Republicans didn't embrace the Democrat defund the police message immediately is still beyond me. But here's a perfect instance, right? This is how you're going to get alignment, and you're going to get people to break free from the fake prison of two. Is you're starting to folks who are ready to look at the world anew, and all of this type of corruption, seeing even the machinations to get a Biden-Trump 2 fight, all of that stuff is the kind of are the kind of events that Americans are going to reject and abandon and choose something that is completely new, right? And that's what we need. That's the hole in the line of defense that Bitcoin requires. That's the light that Bitcoiners need to run towards, because it's this once in a generation opportunity to completely rewrite how we do things that is going to allow hyper Bitcoinization to come imminently and soon. Because as faith erodes in these institutions, and as people start to completely change their predictions, their script, what they want to see in life, like a guy like Joe Lonsdale, right? All of a sudden now saying, yeah, defund the police is probably the way to go. Right? Because it's the defund the police argument. It's the same thing we heard in 2020, except now it's a different police force. It's the FBI, but it's the same idea. And I think when you add up the folks who are out there, you get Tulsi Gabbard, who is saying that she's regularly spied upon now. And, I'm nervous about, I have been for a long time. I just heard that in Canada, I didn't know this. In Canada, you know how scared this makes me? And I don't get scared about stuff like this. Do you know that the Chinese, the CCP has police stations in Canada? What a corrupt country. Now, I don't even go to China anymore for those reasons. Someone invited me recently to Hong Kong. I might go. I love Hong Kong. It's one of my favorite places in the world. But it's China now, right? The last time I was in China, I was there with it was early crypto days. It was 2016. It was a bunch of people. It was Vitalik, Samson Mao, Zuko Wilcox. What's the guy who created? What's the fellow who created Stellar? Big names. There were spies everywhere, all over us. That worried me at the time. So I never forgot that, right? I never forgot having spies sicked on me so blatantly and so openly like that. And it bothered me at the time. And it made me think in 2016, this was 2016, that I can't go back to China. It's too risky, right? It's too dangerous. And that sounded insane in 2016 and 2017 when I would tell people that I'm not going to China. I'm not going there. And now they're in Canada, right? So now we've mentioned many times this idea of your mind being open to new things and not being anchored by, for example, patriotism and money. I admire that in the Chinese, right? I admire that greatly, right? The problem with China is the CCP. The people don't have the same brainwashing as Americans and are probably as open, some of them anyway, to at least changing the money system, the financial system, because it's not so bound up in patriotism as it is in America. But Americans, right, have a lot of misplaced, like Joe Lonsdale, misplaced patriotism. It is in institutions. It is in things that were created. This World War II construct is unfortunately been so brainwashed into Americans as being a good thing, and it probably was at the time, right? But entropy sets into all systems, and what we have now is something that is unsalvageable. So the more we get people opening their minds to complete and total change, the more likely a full Bitcoin insurrection is going to be, right? So when you hear people now calling for these institutions to be torn down, right, it's excellent. Now, what we do here, right, what we do here is we try to find a way to prepare you for more of these hoax type things like Russia, and January 6th and the Nord Stream situation, right? So that you don't get caught up in the fake prison of two ideas. The whole point is to always reiterate the third rail that Bitcoin offers, the original and interesting opportunity and avenue to fix problems that Bitcoin offers in each of these instances. And so now it's become, after this Durham report, I think we have the pieces in place to say explicitly, we know the formula. We've seen the formula many times. What does America do? It does it abroad and it does it at home. You go into an election, you make it look a bit scammy, you fund one side with media and make it a good and bad situation, and boom, you're good, right? You get to set all of the agenda. And that's what's happened over multiple instances here, right? We see it with Ukraine. We see it with January 6th. We see it with the vaccines, unfortunately. And now we see it with full, I think, confirmation about just how rotten it was. So that's all I got for you guys this morning. Let me just see a few of these comments. And we need a breakup. Yeah, glitching a little. Sorry, Ranmore. It was the most bare. This is a midnight arrival in midnight arrival here. Good morning, Joe. This is midnight arrival in Miami. Not a great sleep, but not bad. So I'm just, not that prepped this morning. So this is what zero prep looks like, guys. We'll gladly put up with it. Thanks, Ranmore. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Full reserve banking through stable coins. Yeah, I've always been a stable coin fan, but here's where I think fiat currency goes. It goes full politics. It's UBI. It turns into pure UBI. That's what we're headed to. Political money, absolute political money, which is fine. We know Trudeau loves China. We know he loves China. The basic dictatorship. I can see from my place in Montreal, I can see the house he grew up in on the hill. Oh, it makes me so angry. You should. It's for you Americans. You don't understand what it's like to have aristocrats in your midst. It's not. It's awful. It's just awful. He lives like, and he grew up that way. There's a few houses you can build up on the downtown portion of Mount Royal in Montreal. You can see each of them individually, right? And of course, you know what it was? His granddaddy had the first gas stations in Montreal, by the way. That's how they made their money. And then the dad was like, one of these aristocrat people running around the world, going to school and all these kinds of things. So there you go. 2 phone calls from China lately. Yeah, can you believe there's police offices? Now, I'm not worried about getting arrested by them, but I don't want CCP police offices in a North American land, It just makes me think, it induces the kind of feeling, I think, that Canadians don't understand the powers that control their country, which I think is another one of these instances where it might wake people up. But who knows? Canadians are really stupid, though, guys. Don't wait around for Canadians. Americans at least have a chance here, right? Don't wait around for Canadians. It's not looking good. It's not looking good. Quebecers, totally different, right? Totally different. They're stupid in their own ways, but they're different. the stupidity is different. So they wouldn't. They would have a lot of problems with a CCP police office opened in Canada. That Canadians might just be like, oh, they're probably just trying to help people cross the road, right? A lot of Chinese, yeah, and you know, we had the old Chinese migration. If you guys don't know how Chinese migration has worked, they were all Cantonese, so they all came from Canton, Guangzhou, and the Hong Kong region for many years. Whatever you think of as Chinese food comes from there, right? That's its origins. So the original 1800s immigration to Canada of Chinese people and all the world were Cantonese people. But indeed, we have gotten tons of Mandarins because of the universities and everything over the years. So excellent Canadian citizens and contributors to the country. The problem is we don't want the CCP around, right? At all. Quebecers would lose their shit if that happened in Quebec. Lose it, right? Nothing like the rest of Canada. The rest of Canada would be like, wow. I'm telling you, they would swear if the CCP put out a statement and said they're there to help old Chinese people cross the street. They'd believe it. That's how dumb they are, right? Unfortunately, that's how dumb they are. In Quebec, they would burn it down. That's what I have to say about that. Quebecers are very clear about how people should act when they come to their place. They're not like the rest of North America at all. And you got to respect them for that. You know, that I have no problems with it. I grew up as a minority there, and you know, it might have bugged me a little bit when I was young, but I speak French. I'm over it. I don't try to. Oh, they don't speak English there. You know, a lot of English Canadians still say that when they're in Quebec. There's some in New York. Yeah, those ones are even the police things in New York are. Yeah, I heard about those. I did. You know, now that you mention it, P-Man Van, I hadn't really thought of that. So I guess I've lived with it before, and it didn't bug me then. So it's not gonna bug me. Anyway, team, I gotta run. I have a meeting with the whole Bitcoin Magazine team at the top of the hour, 9 o'clock at the venue. So I gotta walk over there. The stream quality, it might be here again tomorrow because we're not live with the show yet. So it might be here again tomorrow, maybe a short one, depends on how well prepared I am. The internet did seem fine, so I don't know how glitchy it'll be. I will be getting a better mic for this because the mic never works very well. But Perry says, looking forward to watching the conference live streams. Yeah, they're going to be great, guys. We have a lot of excellence. You know, I helped, let's say, steer the camera to the live feed, so where it goes, right? It'll go here, go there. There you go. All right, everyone, have a great day. Love it, Beardy Day. Love it. Peace, everyone. See you tomorrow.